Good afternoon. And today we have a very special guest. We have Mike Johnson, who is a TV personality of Bachelorette Nation, and now he's a board certified sexologist. Good afternoon, Mike.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Maria, for having me. It's so awesome to see you again.
I want to give a little history of our relationship. We met at the Renaissance weekend. And I personally, shame on me, I didn't know who you are, but I find you very pleasant and open, and you give me so many valuable advice towards running this channel. But I'm so passionate to bring people education. And I want to tell to our audience that's the first guest what we're going to have a conversation about sex. And in my clinical practice, you would be surprised, but that question comes quite often. I talk to people about disturbed sleep, and a lot of people come to me because they want to have a better sex life, and they refer to me by the urologist because they want to get some medications. And they cannot have those medications because they have a sleep apnea. So sleep apnea have to be addressed first. And I always not wonder, but I always feel very sympathetic towards people, and I want them to have sexy life and healthy life and happy life. All of it cannot be divided. It's all part of adult life. But sometimes another question arises when people snore and they have disturbed sleep, and the partner complain, and they cannot have that happy, sexy, healthy life for that reason. So that's a very common topic, but we kind of feel a little bit ashamed or uncomfortable to talk about that, and very often for that reason it's become unaddressed. So I brought Mike, who is a board certified psychologist, and we're gonna uncover that puzzle. And I want to tell a little bit about Mike. Of course, he was America's most eligible bachelor of Play One on TV. His new career, he is board certified psychologist, but before that, he was a sex coach. And before that, he was a financial advisor. And before that, he was Air Force. And he has a platform called Feeling Seen. I recommend you to check. And also, he has a book on Amazon called Making Love You Want. I highly recommend you. I read the book. It's a great book. And we'll find out what happened in Mike's life, how he transitioned from one career to another. And now, he found his calling. And today, the most interesting thing, we're going to find out about 5-step formula for better sex. So good afternoon, Michael. And I'm going to say thank you to our audience. If you have trouble sleeping or sleep next to the snoring partner, to bring this conversation, our conversation would be really good for you. And if you're a medical professional, please use this information as a networking ground, because your patients, need a little bit of that in life. And most important, this conversation is to build a community. We all want to sleep. We all want to be happy. So, Michael, I would like to ask you the first question. How it happened, what you transition, like I mentioned, from Air Force to financial advisor, and then you become TV personality.
Yeah, so crazy. That was never in my plans. Never did I say, Mom, I want to be on TV to be on a reality TV show. That was not in the plans at all. The way it happened, honestly, I was working as a financial advisor, a wealth management advisor. And one day while I worked, I just threw my phone down. And a friend of mine, my colleague, he said, Well, what's wrong? And I said that I just want to be in a, I honestly asked him and told him that I wanted to be in a real relationship. I wanted to be in a relationship to where I got married and, I was able to settle down and have roots and create a family. And he laughed at me. He laughed at me for so long. He said, Why would a guy that's in your position say something so crazy? And I thought he was crazy. I laughed at him. And so we clearly didn't have an understanding of each other. But I think after I continued to talk, he started to find that I was being genuine. I genuinely wanted to be in a long-term relationship. And so a few weeks later, he sent me a Facebook message request, and it was The Bachelorette. And it was an audition, a casting call, shall I say, in Houston, Texas. And I was off work that day, and so it seemed like all the stars aligned. And I put on my suit because I was a wealth management advisor. I didn't know what to wear. And I put on my suit, drove up to Houston from San Antonio at the time, and it was about 900 people there, and I would say about 100 guys. And so it was about a 1-to-9 ratio from women to men. And I wasn't comparing myself per se, but one of the cool things I felt that I had a good shot was when I was in Houston and a news crew came over to me, and people were they were giving me their daughters, and they were saying, "Oh, you're the bachelor. Here's my daughter." Blah blah blah. And I was just so taken back. I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm just auditioning too." And so finally, they realized that I was just a participant trying to audition. And when I was on the Houston news, I was like, "Hey, I'm just auditioning. This isn't nothing serious." Um, I made it through that round, and then it was about 5, 6, 7 more rounds over the next 3, 4 months, and I made it on the show. That's how kind of it all started.
But I personally think with Eugene and personality shining through, of course, they
Thank you.
want
I
to
appreciate
choose
that.
you.
I
But
really appreciate that.
now I want to find out how from the show you become self-love advocate. Then,
Yes.
5 years working as a self-coach, and now you're on a new level, board certified sexologist. Number one, congratulations on your passing your exam, your board. We're
Thank
very
you.
proud of you. But tell me how that, I would say, second shift of your career happened.
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated with how people perceive thoughts and how some people let the experiences that have happened to them brush off their shoulder, while other people, when experiences happen to them, they really affect them in a long term way. So that's always been a part of my mind. And then when I went to the military, I became a victim's advocate, which is someone that, has some training in how to handle a situation where someone was taken advantage of. And when I was a financial advisor, one of my clients and a friend of mine from middle school, she actually took her life. And so in my book, I talk about, I dedicate my book to her. Her name is Courtney. And I talk about, in my opinion, we're living in a pandemic right now of people wanting to be perfect on IG and unable to handle the imperfections in their everyday life. And so I wanted to create a book because I personally feel that media is the biggest outlet and the biggest contributor to how we act. And so my thought was to write a book around it. And then I found out that the book wasn't the best success at the time. And so I became a sex coach, but I wanted to further my studies because I just felt the inclination to learn more about it. And when I found out that mind, body, spirit, and sex has been used for thousands of years to help people to live a life free from suffering, I wanted to know all about it and I wanted to know more. And so that's why I went to school and became a board certified sexologist.
I think it's really important step in everyone's life. And I want to ask you things related to our channel and to my,
No,
everyday
please.
practice and our listeners. So I'm going to start with a laughing matter, which is not a laughing matter. It's snoring. Snoring can be a significant issue in an intimate relationship. How would you advise someone who is uncomfortable with their partner snoring or sleep apnea to bring it up without causing discomfort?
That question hasn't come up while I was as a sexologist, but as a veteran and someone who's deployed and has worked with a lot of people with PTSD, I know that some of those individuals have sleep apnea and they wear a sleep apnea, they wear a CPAP machine once they're asleep. And so I always tell my clients, you have to speak about it because your partner isn't a mind reader. You have to let them know what's going on. And I always talk about what Emily Morse has said: timing, tone, and turf. Make sure it's the right time. Don't tell nobody when the game is on, for example, or your favorite cooking show is on. Make sure it's the right time. Make sure it's the right turf. Don't talk about this in a negative way in front of you at your friend's house. Make sure that you're at your home when it's just the two of you talking. And then, of course, the tone that you speak in says everything. Experts say 70 to 93% of our communication is nonverbal. And so the way that you say something really matters.
That's a great advice. But like specifically, we're talking about CPAP machine. If someone using CPAP machine, it can affect intimacy in a relationship.
Yes.
How would
For
you
sure.
suggest they exactly discuss with their partner? I'm talking about, let's say, about newer relationship, somebody, starting a relationship, and
Yes.
how, we're going from one level to another, like from novelty to that's become a routine. Like how you make that conversation?
Yeah. So, of course, we got to keep in mind timing, tone, and turf. But then from there, we want to talk about some nonviolent communication ways. A wonderful book by Gary Chapman. So, we talk about first is observing the situation. Is this something that they can control or something that they cannot control? What that tells us, if this is something that they cannot control, let's seek outside professional help, right? Always first speak to your doctor, your practitioner, your sleep apnea doctor in regards to this, right? So that's the very first step, understanding what's going on. When it comes to sex, specifically sex, but this also applies outside of sex, there's normally three blocks that prevent us from reaching a life of bliss, which are lack of awareness, lack of education, and lack of sensation. And so when it comes to your partner snoring, one of the blocks that you're having is a lack of education. So first thing is to go get educated, have an understanding from there. That allows you and your partner to take this information and now have a educational conversation. And I always start with, if you're the person that is the person listening to the sleeping, and believe me, I've been there before. It is terrible. You don't want to be in that position. I understand from personal experience. I understand. I always talk about, when you're talking to that person, don't make them feel small. You want to empower that person. The way that you can best empower someone is by giving them a choice after they've heard the way that you feel about it. And so, what I mean by that is saying, hey, when you snore, or when I hear you snore, I feel this way. I want to do this. I think about this. Always say I, instead of you do this, you do this, you do this. Because when you do the you, you're pointing back at yourself for one, but then two, you're making that person become defensive. And when someone is defensive, you're not going to be able to build bridges.
I really think you put it so beautifully, especially about building bridges. I like building bridges.
Yes,
And
yes.
how you put about yourself. I think it's really key of conversation to express yourself.
Hmm. You
But
have to.
I'm going to ask you even more difficult question, because
Please.
besides patients who, we call it, suffer from snoring, patients don't really suffer from snoring, but the partner does. And or stop breathing, that's another very stressful experience. If your partner stop breathing next to you in bed, I don't think you continue sleeping well. That's a really traumatic experience. But a lot of times, I don't want to really be, gender specific, but with the male, it happened more. What women try to address it, maybe in the wrong way, maybe in the right way, but the partner doesn't want to have a discomfort with, different treatment device, and they act ignorant. How if how that person can express, it's not already, we're not talking about the first time, but it's partner snoring and breathing interruption, and conversation happened in the past and partner didn't take any action. How would you, like, we're talking about already chronic issue, we're not talking about
Yes.
acute disease.
Yes. When it comes to dealing with a chronic issue, so we're talking about a relationship that has been established. We're talking about a relationship that has been there for some time versus the first question, which was kind of a new relationship. When the relationship is established, people often say, you can't teach a new dog new tricks. What I say is, if that person tells you that they love you, how do they show you that they love you? That's a beautiful way. And then you could speak about, well, I feel love in this way. You show love in this way. And so therefore we can kind of understand where there's misalignments. And so therefore for us to get aligned, because if you love me, then we want to be aligned. And if we're not using love we're not weaponizing love. We're using love, as I used before, as a way to connect with one another. Because in sexology, oftentimes we say that our reproductive parts are like antennas, and we can see if you're not fully connected. We can feel that connection being there or not. And if you're not allowing me to say how I feel because of your snoring and how it's affecting me, as you say in your community, it's the person that's snoring isn't suffering. It's the person that has to hear the snoring that's suffering. So if the person snoring isn't allowing us to connect, then we have to have a real conversation around what are we doing in this relationship. We have to have, it sounds trivial, but a relationship is nothing more than finding new and creative ways to continue to work together and thrive together.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful way you say. But I want to know your view on sleeping in the separate bedrooms, because a lot of people, they said, I don't know if you know that fact, but
Yes.
30% of houses in United States built with two master bedrooms. So originally, people, when they buy the house, they already consider they're going to sleep in a separate bedroom. And a lot of people mention that to me, but they don't like to sleep in a separate bedroom.
Well, you said
Usually,
30% of new Americans households are creating two master bedrooms.
yeah,
Wow.
that's the statistic I took online, and it's unfortunate because so many people do suffer from snoring, and a lot of people suffer from a very light sleep. So, what's your relationship towards separate bedroom? What do you think about that concept? Because a lot of people don't like to sleep in a different bed. They think it's affect their relationship, but in the same
Yeah,
time, they don't want to address snoring either.
I appreciate the question and even the comment, the fact, the stat that you said about 30%. I'm not abreast amongst the newest information regarding the sleep apnea and how it affects couples. But what I do know is sleeping in a separate bedroom is not all the time, but at times can be difficult to our connection. Can be difficult to that from a sense of touch, for example. Touch is the very first thing that is created as we're embryos when it comes to our five senses. And so it's a huge pivotal thing. But my thoughts that I have on people that sleep in separate rooms is that for sleep apnea, it's definitely a quick fix, but we have to fix the cause in comparison to just having a band-aid. I think sleeping in separate bedrooms is simply a band-aid. And I think that if we don't fix the root cause of the situation, which means to have the difficult conversation, and for at times, a part of difficult conversation means that you need to make some difficult decisions on how you want to affect your life going forward and change your life going forward. Because if you sleep in separate rooms, and I don't know any study on this, I haven't done the studies on this, but what I do know is that an infant, if they haven't been touched from anyone in 12 weeks, they can actually die and pass away. And now as adults, I'm not saying that we're going to die and pass away, but what I am saying is that our relationship can can be hurt a bit if you're sleeping in separate rooms for a period of years of time, unless it's something that you both feel most comfortable with.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the reality. But now I want to ask you to go a little bit more towards your, uh, you know, professional. How you address issues when couple bring you issue of disturbed sleep and intimacy. It might be insomnia and intimacy in your coaching practice.
Yes, and so when I speak with clients, when we have a client session, the very first thing that we do is mindfulness connection. In our world, we often talk about getting out of your head and getting into your body. And so the very first thing is we do like a 10 count deep belly breathing, just simply to connect. And one of the things that we do with that, there's a five positions that we get into. One of them is with our mouth closed, tongue on the roof of the mouth behind your two front teeth. Um, and that's one of the things that we do in that regard, just to establish the setting. And then secondly, we want to get into a relaxed, as I call the peaceful mind, right? Or the parasympathetic mind. And so in order to get into that relaxed mindset before we have these conversations, if we're in the bed and you may have, for example, water by your bedside, drinking water can activate your ventral vagal pathway. You're ingesting, right? Looking into each other's eyes, especially the left eye, because it goes to the right brain. The right brain controls emotions. right? Touching your partner on the thigh in a non-sexual manner or the top of the back before you're about to speak to them. Having smooth, soothing sounds. For example, what I like to do, my partner and I, we both love to have rainwater sounds as we sleep, right? And then lastly, having smooth synths playing. Those five things right there activate the social activation system or the ventral vagal pathway, allowing us to connect while we're in a peaceful state versus, when you come off work and you're in traffic, I don't want to talk to you right now. My mind is in an elevated state right now. And so therefore, when I'm calm and restful and peaceful, I'm more receptive to listen to what you have to say. Receptive, shall I say.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I want for our audience to know, please tell us what simple 5-step formula. I know some of it you mentioned, and they really related to things what we teach our patients with the breathing, belly breathing, and tongue position on the roof of the mouth. But we're living in the real world. So please give us
Yes.
5-step formula. What's the easy way to connect to your partner, which might play a role in the intimacy when you don't have enough time?
Always, always, always. You have to observe how are they going to take it. For example, you had mentioned men earlier. Oftentimes, cisgender men want respect more than anything else. And so therefore, if you're talking crap about me and my snoring, I may feel threatened. And so therefore, talk to me in a manner that I want to protect you. You could, for example, in this case that you said, instead of saying, babe, you snore so much, it pisses me off, it's annoying, you could say, hey, babe, Q4 is coming up. I can't wait to buy these Christmas presents for our children. I'm having trouble sleeping. They've already mentioned it at work. I was wondering, what are ways that you think that we could work through this? When you say you think, what you're doing is empowering your partner. And now your partner feels that, okay, you're not talking crap about me. Instead, what you're really doing is you want to build and you want to be a team. And now we're coming to a solution together.
Well, that's nice. But I want you to give us that 5-step formula
Oh,
when we
for
talk
sure, for sure,
about.
for sure, for sure. So when it comes to living a life full of blissful sex and having a wonderful system that way, we will say step one is discovery, right? And I'm about to give you these 5 points. I'll say it really quickly. Step one, discovery. Step two is communicate. Three is consent. Four is engage, and five is reflect. And so I talk about this in a continuum way because step one being discovery. If you don't know what you're wanting to talk about, then you can skip back to step five, which is reflection. So the last time we brought this conversation up about your sleep apnea and your snoring, I need to reflect. And now I've discovered via the last reflection how you do not like me talking shit about you, for example, or talking crap about you. Sorry. You don't like me talking crap about you. And so therefore, let me communicate in a different way this time. Let me communicate choosing to make you feel as if you were an authority. Let me communicate in a way that is not condemning you, but rather making us a team in this regard. And that goes with directly with sex as well. And so, a big time we talk about there's 5 principles of sexual communication. One of them we talk about is the reason that you must talk is because your partner is not a mind reader. Something very simple like please and thank you goes a long way because please, it changes the demand into a request. Thank you, it goes from you doing something to not knowing if your partner accepted it or appreciated it to saying thank you, which is showing a sign that what you asked for was done. And so it's truly about being a kind individual, being a thoughtful person. If you come with love, kindness, and compassion, there's no way that you're going to lose in the bedroom or out of the bedroom.
That's so powerful. Thank you very much. And I recommend to our audience to check the website called Feeling Seen and Mike's book, what I really like. It's on Amazon, Making the Love You Want. I think it's really empowering book. So thank you very much, Michael. We really appreciate your presence. And especially in the light of holidays, I think the resolution for 2024 can be have more, intimate relations in life because that bring happiness. So thank you for bringing that in
Oh,
reality
thank
with
you.
your recommendations.
No, thank you so much. I'll say that all doctors, despite what background a doctor comes from, or what modality they teach, and what part of the body that they work on, will say that uh, a boosting positive serotonin levels or positive oxytocin levels are always going to be a good thing for you. And so sex boosts that. So why not have more intimacy?